Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we look into the upcoming tennis French Open and preview the top players' potential at Roland Garros. For this conversation, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. All right, the second Grand Slam of the year, the French Open, is around the corner. For Chinese fans, of course, first of all eyes must be on Zheng Qinwen, who is going to play her fourth Roland Garros. She's the 8th seed of the women's singles this year. Notably, she recently beat her bitter rival, Aryna Sabalenka, for the very first time in her career, right ahead of the French Open campaign. So, Tianyu, do you think that victory came at the right time, at the right place for Zheng Qinwen? Is she having the perfect form going into the Grand Slam event?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think Zheng Qinwen's hitting form at exactly the right time for the French Open, and that win over Sabalenka was really massive because it was the first time she's ever beaten her, and we've talked about that earlier in the episode, how Sabalenka had been her kryptonite for over these years. I think Zheng just couldn't find a way through before, but this time she totally flipped the script, and just like what she said afterward on her social media, no mountains were insurmountable. That was really a breakthrough moment for her, and you could see it in how she handled the match, because in the past she was often got overwhelmed by Sabalenka's power, but this time she played with so much more maturity because her serve was steady. She wasn't trying to match power with power, but instead she used variety, stayed unpredictable, and didn't give Sabalenka those rhythm building points. So yeah, I think she also defended with purpose, made her work for every winner and showed that kind of grit that disrupted Sabalenka's flow. I think that was high-level game planning, and it just shows how far Zheng has come tactically. But I would say the biggest shift came from Zheng's mentality, because that win wasn't just about beating Sabalenka. It was about proving to herself that she actually belongs at the top level. So you can't fade that kind of confidence, and going to Roland Garros with that kind of momentum is very huge, because clay, the surface of clay rewards those players that's mentally tough, players who can stay calm, who can stay locked in during long rallies and grind out points. So I would say Zheng is showing that she's built for that now. And also, even though she lost to Coco Gauff in the semis, I think that match was just as tight as the scoreline suggests, because Gauff leads the overall record against Zheng, but every one of those matches has been competitive. It's not like Zheng was crashed by Gauff every time, but instead she's been right there, just a few points away. So I think with the confidence boost from taking down a top-tier opponent like Sabalenka, the next time she faces Gauff, it's going to be totally different. It's going to be a whole different situation. I think that mental edge could tilt things her way. So yeah, I think I'm really optimistic about her prospect in the French Open. And if she keeps that level, a deep run at the French Open is absolutely on the table. So yeah, I think semifinal is very possible, just as things stand right now. And if a few big names slip early, I think Zheng would be very likely to make some very loud noise in the final, perhaps in the final weekend. So I think she's not just knocking on the door anymore; she's already kicking it down.
Right, at last year's French Open, Zheng Qinwen crashed early in the third round. But 1 month later, she won the Paris Olympic women's singles title at the same venue. So I would say Zheng Qinwen is very hard to predict. She could always surprise you for good or bad reasons. Yeah. So, Brandon, I will give this one to you. Where could Zheng Qinwen end up for this French Open, and how much of an impact does that victory against Sabalenka bring to Zheng Qinwen's game?
Oh, geez, it's like kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen with Formula One this season, because we all thought one thing was going to happen, but every single race weekend, something different seems to happen. And it's kind of a similar situation with Zheng Qinwen, at least in the early stages of the season, because, we've seen some incredible victories and some very disappointing losses. And I suppose we've been saying that about Zheng Qinwen for, the last 2 years or so. But it always just makes her fascinating to watch because obviously we all want the absolute best for her. But sometimes, we're either incredibly disappointed or she just delivers, the absolute best moment of our week where she does something absolutely incredible. That victory against Aryna Sabalenka was probably one of the best things I've seen all month. I mean, to see someone overcome such a massive hurdle like that was really inspiring. Of course, Aryna Sabalenka, one of the deadliest tennis players of the last couple of generations, I would say since Serena Williams. I haven't seen someone that athletic and just powerful and dominant and intimidating. I mean, Iga Swiatek and, Coco Gauff and a couple of these other players are really, and Zheng Qinwen, they're all really graceful and really amazing to watch and are just immensely talented. But there's just something about Sabalenka that is, I mean, she's not overly imposing or like, 6'4", like 100 kilos, or, she's not like that intimidating. But for some reason, when she steps on the court, she always just looks like this dominant force. She
Yeah.
just looks like she owns the court. So for any player that comes up against her, or for just fans watching her, rooting for her opposition, like when we root for Zheng Qinwen, it's always just a little bit scary. So to see Zheng Qinwen, after 6 losses, finally get that win in straight sets, and just the way she played, and improving on all of her her match aspects. I mean, for example, improved tactical awareness, utilizing deep topspin heavy ground strokes, to come up against Sabalenka's really famous aggressive play. Her composure in long rallies, the improved first serve, all of these things that we've been talking about for a long time. Zheng Qinwen seems to have fine-tuned some of those elements of her game. And I think she really shocked Aryna Sabalenka with that victory, and probably shocked herself too. I don't know if she was expecting such a fantastic performance from herself. And credit to her, it was really fantastic to watch. I think going into the French Open, it must be a huge confidence boost. And I'm really rooting for her going into that Grand Slam tournament. I think things are looking really good for her. Even though she didn't lift the title in Italy, I think there's definitely still some promising signs. Look, I think heading into Roland Garros, I'd say Zhang's form is, of course, promising, but not, the fully finished product, which we're hoping to see at Roland Garros. It's going to be a challenge. But that being said, if Zhang is seated somewhere between 6th and 10th, she might avoid top 4 opposition until the quarterfinals. And like Tianyu mentioned, if a couple of big names drop out early on, that might ease her progression, from quarterfinal, semi-final, and hopefully into a final, where if she does get to that quarterfinal, semi-final, final stage, hopefully she can, have a bit of a lack of fatigue and then save her best performances for high quality opposition like Coco Gauff, like Aryna Sabalenka. So just looking at a form perspective and, improving some of the areas that she needed to improve, I think she's definitely on the right track. And in terms of the biggest struggle that I think she's faced over the last season or two, the mental struggle, I think that victory over Aryna Sabalenka will be a massive confidence boost for Zhang. And I have high, high hopes that going into Roland Garros, I think we might see, I hope we'll see the best performance from Zheng Qinwen at a Grand Slam for quite some time. And while I wouldn't say that she's the favorite to go on and win the title, I think she has a very, very strong chance of getting to the semi-final or even the final. And hopefully when she gets to those points, she can hold on to her good form, improve on things like second serve and a couple of other things that we've mentioned, and deliver her absolute best performance, and hopefully face Aryna Sabalenka again in a final,
Yeah.
and hopefully overcome that hurdle once again, and we can see Zheng Qinwen finally lift that first Grand Slam title.
That would be massive.
Yes, that victory against the Sabalenka was a major breakthrough for Zheng Qinwen. I think it's even bigger than a WTA 500 title.
Yeah.
Because after that win, Zheng Qinwen can no longer be bothered by that psychological barrier.
Yeah.
Am I good enough to beat her? Am I capable of beating Sabalenka? That's, self-questioning and disbelief must have caused some mental struggles for Zheng Qinwen. But now she can finally get herself out of it and entirely focused on her game. If I'm Zheng Qinwen, I would be thinking, okay, I'm definitely on the right track. If I play my tennis well, I can beat anyone.
Yeah.
So that confidence boost is the biggest asset Zheng got from that victory. Before we move on to the men's game at Roland Garros, let's quickly have a review of what happened in the sports world for the past week. Oklahoma City Thunder All-Star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has won the NBA Most Valuable Player award. Gilgeous-Alexander led the league in scoring with 32.7 points per game and joined Michael Jordan as the only players in NBA history to average at least 30 points per game on 50% shooting in a season. Gilgeous-Alexander received 71 first-place votes for his first Michael Jordan trophy.
I would like to start this whole, speech with just thanking my teammates. I can't say enough how much you guys mean to me, and not only as a basketball player, but as family. You guys, I know you guys know, we do everything together on and off the court. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. And I want you guys to know, this award is your award too.
Denver's Nikola Jokic finished second. Top seed Zhejiang Guangxia Lions are the champions of the Chinese Basketball Association for the first time in the club's 20-year history, clinching the title with a 125-118 win over the Beijing Ducks in Game 6 to seal the best-of-7 final series 4-2. Guangxia guard Sun Minghui says he's eyeing bigger goals after the championship.
This is my 10th season to play in CBA, and I have realized my dream. It's difficult to win the title, but we have very good teammates and families who support us. I hope it's our first step. We will work harder to pursue bigger dreams in the future.
The championship marks a milestone for Guangxia, who finished the season with the league's best record and now finally a title to match. Tottenham Hotspur defeated Manchester United 1-0 in the Europa League final, courtesy of an own goal by United defender Luke Shaw in the closing moments of the first half. The goal summed up what was a lackluster final between the sides currently 16th and 17th in the Premier League. Spurs coach Ange Postecoglou says he always wins something in his second season at the club.
Sort of the end of January, the end of the transfer window, and kind of assessed our situation. I just made a decision there and then that this was the trophy we were going to go for, and I just really believed we could win sort of everything we've done since then, everything we've done at training, everything we've done in terms of the games, the teams I've selected is about making sure when these games came around, the Europa games, that we're in the best possible condition to tackle.
The win secures Tottenham a spot in next season's Champions League. Olympic swimming champion Pan Zhangle edged out a star-studded field to win the men's 200-meter freestyle at China's national championships in Shenzhen, beating three-time Olympic gold medalist Sun Yang. The final featured three Olympic gold medalists, Sun, Wang Shun and Pan. Veteran Sun, returning from injury, finished in 8th place. Alright, welcome back. It's been 20 years since Novak Djokovic made his Roland Garros debut. 20 years on, Djokovic has grown into the greatest of all time with 24 Grand Slam titles. As a Djokovic fan, I really hope to see that 25th Grand Slam trophy at Roland Garros, a feat no one in history has ever achieved in the tennis world. But realistically speaking, I think it's a mission impossible, almost impossible for Djokovic if we take a look at his poor 2025 season, and he had some changes within his team recently. He parted ways with his coach, Andy Murray. That means he will go to Paris alone without a coach. So Tianyu, why do you think Djokovic and Murray ended their partnership after just 6 months? And is this a bad sign for Djokovic for the upcoming French Open campaign?
Well, honestly, we don't have all the behind-the-scenes info right now, but I think there are a few layers to this breakdown of partnership. Because first of all, I gotta bring up the Daniel Medvedev's comment on this, because he said this partnership was like Messi coaching Ronaldo. So I would say that's a perfect analogy, because you're talking about two generational talents, greats, two alpha competitors, and more importantly, two guys with very different styles of play. Because Novak is all about flexibility, incredible defense to offense, transitions, and mental discipline. But Murray, on the other hand, he leans heavily on counterpunching, tactical variety, and constructing points with feel and finesse. So I think maybe there was a bit of mismatch between them in how they see the game and what Novak actually needed at this stage in his career. Because it's also worth noting that Novak hasn't exactly been in peak from lately. Like you said, he has had a rough clay season in 2025 by his standards, and the signs of wear and tear are definitely there. Because he's already 37 now, and while he's one of the fittest guy on tour, age just doesn't spare anyone. The injuries, the lack of match rhythm, skipping some build-up tournaments, all of that can really add up. So I wouldn't really see this coaching split as a bad sign, because Novak has shown time and time again when it comes to Grand Slams, he knows how to prepare, he knows how to pace himself and how to win. I think he's already one of the most tactically sharp players out there. He doesn't need anyone to teach him how to improve his skill, how to play, or adjust his game plan. If anything, what he needs right now is support in managing his body, conserving energy and staying consistent through the long grind of a slam. So yeah, I would say at this point of his career, Djokovic might actually be the best coach of himself, because no one understands his body, his mindset, or game strategy better than he does. So yeah, I wouldn't count him out just yet, despite all the things happening lately. The end of a great partnership, the injuries and the poor forms he presented in the build-up tournaments. But I think with his incredible adaptability, he just naturally gears himself up when for a Grand Slam when it just comes.
Well, just as the saying goes in China, two tigers can't live in a mountain together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's two tigers for me. Well, personally, I really think they ended this collaboration because Murray just cannot offer Djokovic help from the technical perspective of the game. Look, fans already see, and Djokovic himself already sees, that his legs are getting heavier and heavier and are no longer supporting his old systems. I mean, he can't cover all courts and play flawless defense now. I can tell he's trying to optimize his game by, improving his serve and playing more often around the net. But Murray is not known for these skill sets. He has little to teach Djokovic for those things, I think. Djokovic earlier also said what Murray brought to him was more about motivation, because Murray knows what Djokovic will be facing at the tail of his career. So more of Murray's help came from the mental aspect of the game instead of the technical side of things, which Djokovic needs now. Brandon, what do you think? Do you think Djokovic can go deep at the French Open with this coaching change?
Yeah, it's possible. I think when we've spoken about Djokovic in the past, he seems to be the sort of character that thrives in chaos. I think the situation at the moment, at least on paper or in the media, it does seem like the current situation for Djokovic is a little bit chaotic. He doesn't seem to be able to be, dealing with this new... I mean, it sounds crazy, but, it's not like he's 60 years old, but, we're talking about professional sports. So this new phase of life where he isn't in peak condition anymore. I'm sure he's in a better condition than the average 20-year-old globally. But when you're competing on the world stage against the most finely tuned athletes on earth, even if you are one of the best players of all time, unfortunately, age does catch up with you. And if you don't adapt to it, it can lead to your downfall. But look, there's a couple of things to analyze here. I mean, like you mentioned, Yang Guang, I think the main reason that, at least what was reported, the main reason that Andy Murray was brought in for Djokovic was, Djokovic was just seeking motivation and a fresh approach. And it was believed that someone that competed at least with him, during his era on the tour, would bring that sort of motivation. I don't think he was brought in for his tactical acumen or anything like that. I think it was just to have someone in his corner that would just give him some sort of maybe a fresh mental approach and just maybe, additional motivation, not necessarily for the season overall, but, in a particular, let's say, selected Grand Slam tournament where he could have, saved as much of his energy and focus as possible, which he would then, kind of track back on for, lesser tournaments. Like we saw, things started off relatively well in the partnership, and then we saw, declines in Monte Carlo and Madrid, where signs of physical and mental fatigue for Djokovic were clearly evident. And then, of course, withdrew from the Italian Open, citing elbow discomfort. And some of the performances that we saw definitely lacked tactical clarity and defensive consistency that, Djokovic has definitely become renowned for. And even though, things between Djokovic and Murray have been pretty amicable since the split, and there hasn't been much reported as to, what kind of led to this breakdown. According to multiple sources close to the camp, Djokovic and Murray apparently disagreed over certain aspects of training volume and match strategy, which I think for someone like Djokovic at this latter stage of his career is incredibly important, because obviously deciding when to give your all or when to hold something back a little bit at his age is incredibly, incredibly important, and becomes more and more important by the day as he approaches, late 30s, early 40s. And I'm sure it's similar for other world-class athletes at that age. Look, I know he's not the same age as Cristiano Ronaldo or LeBron James, but I think athletes in those, he's in that athlete bracket for sure in his sport. And I think as he approaches that age, like Ronaldo, like LeBron James, I'm sure, look, I think they always give 100%, but I also think they give 120%, a lot less than they would have done when they were 25, if that makes sense. So I think having those sorts of disagreements would be very problematic for somebody like Djokovic, who's trying to utilize potentially the last year or two of his career as a whole. There were also reports that Djokovic preferred a less data-heavy approach, while Murray emphasized analytic-driven preparation. And that's kind of like fire and ice, right? That's a completely different approach to matches. And I would assume that that sort of disagreement is something that, Djokovic was probably relatively frustrated by. I'm sure he understood what Murray was trying to achieve. But again, I think that after 6 months, it does look like there was some sort of dramatic U-turn. But I think when you're Djokovic's age and you're in the middle of a season, and you really need to try and achieve something as soon as possible, i.e. a 100th title or, one more Grand Slam, you need to make decisions quickly. You can't hesitate. You can't hang on to someone, just out of being polite. So I think Murray and Djokovic probably understood that a change was needed immediately. And even though it does seem quite dramatic, it was reportedly quite amicable. So with Djokovic, I think it is a little bit concerning going into a Grand Slam. We've talked about the elbow discomfort and the injuries and the fatigue and seemingly trying to adapt to a new game approach, like, approaching the net more and that sort of thing. And it doesn't really seem to be working out in his favor. But again, I don't like to call them lesser tournaments, but I guess anything that's not a Grand Slam tournament is viewed as less than. So I think someone like Djokovic that has so many Grand Slam titles, he probably, I believe, uses a lot of those tournaments to try new things, like we've mentioned before in previous podcasts. So I wouldn't say that his form right now is a concern. I would say fatigue and new tactical approaches not working is a concern if he doesn't have set plans for something like Roland Garros. But then again, someone that thrives in chaos, someone that has more experience than anybody else on the tour, you can't discount those elements. So while a deep run in Roland Garros isn't guaranteed, I still have this lingering thought that one more Grand Slam is fully within Djokovic's reach.
Hopefully. Now let's switch to someone fans called the new Novak Djokovic in men's tennis, Jannik Sinner. The Italian has returned to action after a 3-month doping ban and reached the final of his first tournament back in Rome. It seems like he got no rusty at all from the suspension. So Tianyu, how far do you think Sinner can go at Roland Garros this year?
Yeah, I think based on what we saw from Jannik Sinner in Rome, it was just another reminder of how adaptable and talented this guy is. Because even after a 3-month layoff, which really can derail any player, I think he came back looking very sharp, composed, and hungry for trophies. Alcaraz even said after the final, Sinner is such a great player that he had to give the utmost focus onto the game. So I think such remarks and also Sinner's ability to bounce back so quickly just proves how talented this guy is. I've got to say that final between Alcaraz and him was really massive. It was high quality tennis. They had power, precision, and some beautiful shot making, and you could see how well they read each other's game. I think that kind of back and forth with a guy like Alcaraz just proves Sinner's not just back, he's right there among the elite players. So yeah, heading into the French Open, I would say the signs are really encouraging for him. Clay may not be his favorite service, but based on what he just showed in Rome, I think he's more than capable of making a deep run.
Right. Brandon, can we call Sinner one of the favorites for the French Open men's singles title this year?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of elements of his game that make him, someone that is particularly difficult to take on, on the clay court surface. And I think that he just seems to be the sort of player that is able to have a lot of control over, any sort of circumstance that he's placed in. So, I mean, of course, there was the ban that he faced. And, even for someone as talented like him, you would expect a break like that to kind of, lead to some rustiness. But like Tian Yu said, it looked like he hadn't been away at all and didn't lack any confidence against probably, his biggest foe going into the future will be Carlos Alcaraz. Yeah, of course, all of the men's hopefuls going into the French Open, but particularly Alcaraz and Djokovic, who are probably eyeing victory, they will definitely be very concerned, probably more concerned than they would have been about Sinner, just because of the performance that he was able to deliver after some time away. So I would say that Sinner and Alcaraz are the favorites. I still believe that Alcaraz is definitely the out-and-out favorite. I think that he was exceptional against Sinner. So I'm hoping to see a Sinner-Alcaraz final again. So I would say keep your eyes on Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Sinner going into Roland Garros this year.
Before we call it, Tian Yu, how about your choices? Who will win the men's and women's singles titles at Roland Garros this year?
Realistically, I would put money on Carlos Alcaraz for the men's title and Coco Gauff on the women's.
I actually have a feeling that Zheng Qinwen can win it this year for her first Grand Slam title. But I'm just a little worried about her first 3 rounds. I mean, facing lower-ranked opponents, she seems a little inconsistent this year since the Australian Open. But if she could get past the first 3 rounds, I won't put a limit on her potential for the Roland Garros campaign. All right, let's see if we will have surprise winners at Roland Garros this year and how Zheng Qinwen and Novak Djokovic will look on the Grand Slam clay. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.